It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Smooth and Savvy is joined by some of the hottest talent in the entertainment industry, from musicians to authors and all those in between. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Mr. Smooth and Savvy himself, Douglas Coleman.
Hello. How are you? Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. It's me, Douglas Coleman. Nice to have you with us here today. If you've ever aspired to be a comedian, or if you just think you're funny, and perhaps need a few extra tips on how to really polish up your act, my first guest is the man for you. He is a comedy coach, and he has been in the business for over 40 years. Working with such notable people as George Carlin, Jonathan Winters, amongst many, many others. His name is Neil Leiberman. He will be up first. He does his comedy coaching online. You send him your material, and he will critique you and tell you what you could do to improve your timing and technique, I suppose. My second guest is an actor, singer, songwriter, dancer, and now an author. She is currently touring in the Broadway musical The Book of Mormon, which is a very funny show. She was also in The Lion King. And she's got a new book out called Beautiful Carnage. Her name is Monica Patton, and she will be our second guest up. We've also got a song today coming through from Music X-Ray. The song is entitled I'm Yours, and it's by an artist named Christian Heath, who I believe is from South Africa, at least according to his profile on Music X-Ray, has the ZA as the country code. I believe that's South Africa. So, we will play the song first, and then straight into the interviews.
Blinded by my passion, hidden from the truth, hope to find the answers, what it means to love you. No matter what the distance, we're galaxies apart. I'll follow you down every road till the depths of your heart.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on The Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
In-house production and recording in Louisiana Publishing Company is now offering a special for podcasters on their CD Pro Radio network. For just $20 a month, CD Pro Radio will broadcast your podcast twice a week on their network. This is a great and inexpensive opportunity for podcasters to gain some exposure for their show without having to spend a lot of money. Please check them out at cdproradio.com. That's cdproradio.com.
Go listen, download, and subscribe to The Douglas Coleman Show. It's available at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS. Also on iTunes, Spreaker, and YouTube. The Douglas Coleman Show is an internationally syndicated talk and music show that features fascinating and sometimes famous guests from all aspects of the entertainment industry. The topics can range from light and fluffy to sober and serious. Our focus is on music artists, but we also feature producers, authors, directors, and even promoters. The Douglas Coleman Show. Sometimes chat, sometimes music, always entertaining. Again, it's available today at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS. You can also connect with them on Facebook at Douglas Coleman Show 1, follow on Twitter at Douglas Coleman 3, and you can even find them on TuneIn Radio. Again, that's the Douglas Coleman Show at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS, iTunes, Spreaker, YouTube, and more. Go listen, download, subscribe, and share with your social networks today.
Acclaimed author of Garden, Jane Yates brings you the first book in a new trilogy, Octopus Pirate, a story of a foundling who has unusual talents, such as the ability to communicate with octopuses. As a baby, he was washed up on an island off the Scottish mainland. An eccentric former nun who lives alone with cats brings him up. He joins a circus and narrowly escapes plots against him, flees to Cornwall, builds a replica pirate ship that's also an airship to travel back in time to fight real pirates. Get your copy today from Amazon, only 99 cents.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Okay, please welcome Neil Leiberman. Hi, Neil. How are you?
Hello, Mr. Smooth and Savvy. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. You have been in comedy for over 40 years. It's a long time, yeah?
Yes, I'm very, very old and tired.
What was your first job? Were you a comedy coach all the way along, or did you do something else first?
I started as a comedian in the mid to early 70s at the Comedy Store in L.A., and, I was a pretty good comic, really a mediocre comic, not a great comedian. But for some reason, the other comedians were asking me for advice. They'd pull me behind the Comedy Store and say, what do you think of this joke? And I didn't know why they were asking me, but the advice that I was giving them seemed to be working. So one day they sort of teamed up and all pulled me behind the Comedy Store and said, wow, you should be doing this, for a living. And at the time, there was no such thing as a comedy coach. I basically invented the job and trademarked the name comedy coach. And, it allowed me to work in 1,000 different styles versus just my own style. And I didn't have to hang out in smoke-filled comedy clubs anymore. And it just sort of snowballed from there.
Now, some of the old-timers, when I say old-timers, I mean stand-ups like Rodney Dangerfield, I suppose George Carlin would constitute an old-timer at this point. Did they use comedy coaches, or were they just did it on their own? Or was there no such thing?
There was no such thing as a comedy coach.
Okay.
Just did not exist. I created the job. Now there are many, many people doing it. None of them as good as I am. Just kidding.
Oh, of course not.
But I'm sure there are some good ones out there. But it's really something I love to do. I love working with comedians, and my success rate has been pretty good.
Who are some of your favorite comedians?
Well, I like the old guys. I like, again, Bob Newhart, George Carlin, Robert Klein, Jerry Lewis was a big favorite of mine as a kid and as an adult, and I'm not afraid to admit that.
One of my favorites, he wasn't exactly a stand-up comedian, but in terms of his comedic timing, I think he was the master of less is more style of comedy, would be Jack Benny.
Yeah, Benny was absolutely one of my top 5 favorite, I would probably say. You talked about timing earlier, and really that's Jack Benny. It's all about timing. It's all about the slow burn, as they used to call it. Just a look could get a laugh that lasted 30 seconds easily.
Well, he had that amazing ability to just sort of all this craziness going on around him, and all he had to do was look at the ceiling, and that would be and that would close the show.
He was smart enough to surround himself with great talent.
Yes, very true.
A lot of comedians aren't willing to share the laugh with other comedians on their show, but smart people like him and Jackie Gleason and even Mary Tyler Moore, were willing to surround themselves with great people and wanted them to get the laughs.
I remember an interview with Benny on, I think it was Dick Cavett. And
I just saw it recently.
Oh, did you? Okay, maybe. And he was talking about that it didn't matter who got the best laugh. As long as the show was funny, that's all people were going to remember, is that it was a great show. It didn't matter who got the biggest laugh.
Yeah, right. The next morning people were saying, did you see the Jack Benny show? And that's really all that, right. That's all that really matters.
Right, exactly. I also noticed on your bio that you had somebody in Little Miss Sunshine. That was one of the funnier movies I've seen recently. What was your involvement with that?
A lot of my students are not only comedians that I work one-on-one with, but also, actors and public speakers and writers and business professionals, musicians, YouTube sensations these days, filmmakers and television, radio, and podcast hosts, you name it. One of my students was in that movie, and that's not only a funny movie, just a really well-made film, I believe, all the way around. So, I try to prepare my students, even if their goal at first is stand-up, to be able to work in film or theater or other mediums.
Well, yeah, that movie was tremendous. I mean, it was one of those movies that took you through the whole gamut of emotions. You laughed, you cried, you got angry, you did the whole thing.
Well, you had Alan Arkin. You can't go wrong there.
Right. One of the questions that I've always been interested in with comedy versus like music and movies, the internet has kind of changed the landscape radically for entertainment media. It seems to me that the faster we get the information, the faster we can download movies on demand, streaming music, it makes things sort of dated quicker. And comedy to me doesn't seem like it is affected by that as much. Chaplin is still funny 100 years later. I Love Lucy is still hysterical. Some movies you watch, like I just recently watched Midnight Cowboy. And although it was a great film in its day, I mean, the acting and everything is still fantastic. But you watch it and you're kind of like, oh, especially that party scene where the psychedelics and all of it, it really looked dated. And then music is sort of the same way. I mean, the Beatles, okay, they're kind of an exception. But there's music from the 50s and 60s that you kind of listen to and go, wow, But comedy doesn't seem to do that as much. Do you agree?
I I do agree. I think that, we're in a very disposable, the internet's a very disposable medium. But yeah, comedy, it's a boon to the comedy industry. The fact that things hold up forever. I mean, forever. I mean, you can choose anything, that you want to see from as far back as Chaplin, which I'm a huge fan of, and Keaton and W.C. Fields and the Marx Brothers, etc. It's at your fingertips 24 hours a day. What's better than that?
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, I think it's amazing. It's done amazing things, even just for my business as a comedy coach, in that, I can work with people, and I only work one-on-one with people, but I can do that with most of the students I work with live around the world. So we can Skype, any time of day or night. And this is, it's tremendous for me. And I just think for the comedy business in general.
So most of your clients you do by Skype?
Yeah, I would say I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I would say about 10% of my students live here and 90% live around the world, anywhere they speak English.
Give me an example of how you would coach somebody to be funnier.
All right, I'll try. Again, it is one-on-one coaching, so it's very specific to who you are and what you need to work on. I rarely generalize about stand-up. The problem is that a lot of new comedians will read books on how to do stand-up comedy, and the books tend to generalize and give joke formulas which really aren't used anymore unless you're over 70 years old and playing the retirement home circuit. I feel it's a very specific art form. But the way I work it is, people will send me once a week everything they wrote that week. And it's my job to go through that and edit it, punch it up, and pull aside the good stuff. And after we have enough of that good stuff, we structure our first 5-minute routine, which is pretty much all they'll let you do at an open mic or a showcase in a comedy club. And once we get that 5 minutes and my student is totally comfortable with it and knows the act backwards and forwards, and we've rehearsed it 1,000,000 times, then I will send them out to start performing it, but never before that. And once they go out and perform it, they're, of course, recording either audio or video each of their shows, and they're sending me those each week. We're seeing what's working, what isn't working, what we can change in either the writing or the performance. And in the meantime, we're working on the second 5 minutes. So we're always, when you see a comedian who does an hour on stage, they built that 5 minutes at a time. So that's sort of the process. It's sort of a writing, editing, structuring, memorization, rehearsal, performance process.
So let's say that, I decided I wanted to be a stand-up comic.
Okay, go ahead. Just decide it right now.
Is it the same process as it's always been, or is it as DIY as anything else is on the internet now? In terms of you get gigs and you hope you get discovered.
Yeah, well, you do get gigs and you hope to get discovered. But, with me, it's all about the preparation. Because there are certainly thousands of people out there doing open mics, working for free, and who are not prepared. They just go on stage, they grab the mic, and they hope they'll trip over a punchline at some point. But if you go to those open mics and you're fully prepared with a solid 5-minute set, and it's got a certain amount of laughs in it, and it's clean, and it's got mass audience appeal, and you present yourself as a professional, you're going to move up that comedy ladder a little bit faster than everyone else.
So is like YouTube and some of the streaming, are those viable mediums for comics that are just starting out? Like get your video out on YouTube and hope it goes viral?
Well, I think if you're just sort of an internet sensation and not a comedian, yeah, that can work for you. As a comedian, you don't really want to really be giving your jokes away, which you're doing by posting a YouTube video of your 5-minute routine. Every comic in the world is seeing that and maybe either gleaning or stealing blatantly.
Oh, well, that's true. Yeah.
That. So you've got to be really careful. When my students they post things on YouTube, they're usually sending a link to someone specific and only they can see it. Like if you want to send to a booking agent or a manager or whatever. But I would not post stuff, someone's routine on YouTube for everyone to see unless you're already a seasoned, fairly well-known comedian and your material is out there anyway.
Well, it's a good point because I remember as a kid buying comedy records. I remember I had George Carlin. I had a couple of Bill Cosby records. And the one thing that was different about comedy records than music records is that after you played them about 4 or 5 times, they just weren't funny anymore because you've heard it already. Where music you could play over and over and over again. I think you're right. If somebody posts their stuff on YouTube, there's no reason for them to go to see them live because you've heard all their jokes already.
Well, I think what you're seeing is a sampling of their jokes. So if you're seeing 5 minutes of a comic who does an hour or an hour and a half, you're just getting a tease at that point, and maybe you will go see them live in a club. And I think we live in 2 different worlds because I listen to comedy albums, 40, 50 times, especially as a kid. I was always memorizing them, and trying to emulate them. And everyone starts out their career as a comedian, usually imitating another comedian until they find their own voice.
Well, that's similar with musicians that, they'll play their the Beatles records or Elton John or whoever they idolized over and over and over again until they kind of got it and their own self sort of came out of that. I guess for me, once I'd heard the joke, it wasn't funny anymore.
Okay. Well, I'm sure there are plenty of people who feel that way. Unfortunately, you're wrong, but I can't get enough. And someone like George Carlin, who you mentioned, was so prolific that, he was always creating so much material. It didn't matter if you heard his stuff. In 3 months, there was going to be another album.
Well, I'm completely choked up now over that. That was very funny. Anyways, now you're also a writer, correct?
Yeah, I write for comedians. I've written sold a couple screenplays. I've written for television, done some advertising, you name it. And my dad was a freelance writer for over 40 years, which is really difficult to do.
Freelance screenwriter?
No, freelance being, whether it's television writing or advertising or copyright, you name it.
Any writing, yeah.
Mm-hmm. He was published in just about every magazine.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, Neil, our time is up. I want to thank you for coming on. Laugh.com is where you can find downloadable comedy, classic comedy. And comedycoach.com is where they can find you.
Absolutely. Unless they don't want to find me, in which case that's okay too.
Okay. Okay, Neil. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. It was a lot of fun talking to you.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
And now...
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Again?
Nothing up my sleeve. Presto! Ooh, don't know my own strength.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Okay, please welcome Monica Patton. Hi, Monica. How are you?
Hey, hello, Doug. How are you?
Oh, doing fine. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I was looking over your bio, and I think I need you to fill in some of it. It's very brief.
Okay.
It's good, but it's brief. So your background is you were raised in Ohio, right?
I was raised in Ohio, and after college, because I was a ballet major. After college, I moved to Chicago for a year, interned with the Modern Dance Company, and then I moved to big old New York City, and that has been like my residence since then. And I am a musical theater performer, so I sing and dance for a living as well as write.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, when you moved to New York City, were you the sort of quintessential starving artist, or were you funded when you went there?
No, I went there having already did the whole starving artist in Chicago as a concert dance performer. When I moved I heard that in New York that dancers could actually make a living and eat. I think I was 103 pounds soaking wet, and I was hungry all the time. And quoting chorus line, tits and ass, So I was like, great, I can have hips and eat and make a living and be a musical theater dancer. So that's why I moved to New York.
Okay, so you were kind of already established when you went to New York.
I was. I was still bright-eyed. I still had the sheen of Ohio on me, but I had been a little bit informed by then. My year in Chicago was a bit of a university as well. So.
Well, that's kind of the classic story, of people when they move to New York, especially when they're young. I did the same thing. I moved to New York when I was 18 years old.
Woo! So you know.
Yeah, and I was studying acting, but my real passion was music. So when I hooked up with a band, I met people and then got involved with the band. I quit the acting school, which I don't know if that was such a good idea or not, but, and then the story goes on, blah, blah, blah. It was definitely the best and the worst time in my life.
Yeah.
All at the same time.
It really, especially those are, you're still your formative years. And I know that New York can make or break you, but it's really true. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. So.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely believe that. This was back in the early 80s.
Oh, that was an exciting time.
Yeah. New York City wasn't quite as lovely as it is now.
No, not as clean, but you were on the cutting edge of art and theater.
Well, that's true. There was a lot going on. There certainly was a lot happening in the city at that time. I suppose tragically, though, I got there right as the AIDS started to happen. And in the arts, that was a major problem.
It really did.
Yeah.
A lot of talent was snuffed out too early.
Yeah, that was a real drag. And, nobody knew what it was. People were just dropping dead. And it really was scary. Anyways, let's move on to something more more light and fluffy than that.
Kittens.
Kittens. Yeah, let's talk about kittens. Now, you were in the play, The Book of Mormon. Is that correct?
Yes, I am in the Book of Mormon.
Oh, you're still doing it, right?
Yes, hence why I'm in Chicago at the Private Bank Theater. Shout out to the Book of Mormon. And
okay.
My wonderful cast and producers. Thank you very much. But yes, I have been performing in the Broadway musical hit, The Book of Mormon, for going on now 4 years.
Wow, that's tremendous. Yeah. Tell me about the story, because I haven't really read what it was about. Is it kind of a spoof on the whole Mormon thing?
It's a religious satire.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to say spoof, because Matt and Trey are producers, writers, South Park.
Oh, right, yeah.
They really have a lot of reverence for the religion, in a sense that they really put a lot of thought. They did their homework. This is something that's been rattling around their mind for a long time. So it is. It's quite informed. It's really, I really wouldn't even say we're using the religion as a vehicle, but it's really more about because the show has so much heart. Because literally the Mormons go into Uganda as a premise in order to convert, but they come convert it themselves. You know what I mean? It's just really about people kind of finding people and being changed from the experience. And it's done with a lot of, jokes and laughter. And, but I think usually everyone that walks away from it really enjoys themselves. They take away the message of it, really the message of community. And sometimes even when you don't understand a lot of things, knowing that you have this community around you makes up for a lot of life's unknown, because that's really what religion is. It's just people needing to be with people.
Yeah, that's one aspect of it. Religion is a deep subject that I tend not to like to go into on the show.
No, of course.
But
it could go many ways.
It can go many ways. But
the show touts the positive aspects of it. So it's really a romp. It's very funny.
I like that premise. You're telling me the story about they go to Uganda and then they get converted. That's great. Just that line would make me want to go see it.
Oh, you should. Yeah. You definitely should. definitely. And, we can make that happen, Douglas.
Are you coming to Las Vegas?
Oh, we were in Las Vegas.
Oh.
Yeah, we came through Las Vegas twice already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, the next time you come through, or if I get to Chicago,
I will reach out.
Just not in the winter. I can't stand the cold anymore. I'm originally from Boston, and I moved to Las Vegas, and I just can't deal with the cold anymore. And Chicago's worse. I mean, Chicago is much colder than Boston. Yeah.
Do you miss that east edge though?
Yes. It was funny because I was talking about this with somebody else who was on the show, and I said, I love the weather in Vegas, and I like that it's cheap. It's for one of a major city in the United States. It's one of the cheaper ones. I mean, the tax rate is low. There's no income tax, state income tax, and you can eat for almost nothing if you go to the buffets. So I love that aspect of it, but it lacks community. It lacks that sense of, if you're from New York or you're from Boston, you're a Bostonian, you're a New Yorker. And there is a
right. I hear ya.
And there's a sense of community that just isn't there. It's not in Las Vegas. It's definitely not in LA.
God, no. I love LA, but they can drive me crazy. Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying, right? It's just, it's just not there. And I do miss that. I used to love to go to baseball games at Fenway Park, and, you felt like you were just like one big family there, rooting for the team. And you go to a game in LA and nobody's paying attention to the game. Everybody's on their phone, The game is just sort of like the TV that happens to be on in the room, but nobody's watching.
The game is their stage. It's their backdrop.
It's a backdrop. Yeah. It's atmosphere. That's all it is, really. Anyways, so I do kind of miss that, but I think I'll trade that community for the lack of 6 feet of snow in the winter.
I'm getting there. Slowly but surely. You might see me soon.
So where your home base is New York?
Yep,
that's where you live. New York. Okay. And then the show is traveling around. So you're in Chicago now. And where do you go from Chicago?
We go to Vancouver.
Oh, cool.
Canada, yeah. Really excited. It's very beautiful.
How long do you stay in one city in one engagement?
Well, it varies. It varies because, because our stay here is almost, it's pretty much 2 months that we'll be here. When we first started in Chicago, we sat here for 10 months. And then we were in California for like 6 months. So it varies. And like we're in Vancouver for 2 weeks, but then we hit like Edmonton and Calgary when we go week to week. But then we'll hit like certain places where we're going to be for like 7 weeks and 10 weeks. So it varies. We're now starting to get back into our longer stays. There are certain cities that the show has done so well that we can sit, like we've gone to Minneapolis 3 times already, and we're usually there 3 weeks to 4 weeks. It's just, there's certain cities that just love the Book of Mormon. We're very blessed that we have loyal fans that see us repeatedly. So very blessed and very humble.
Now, how many nights a week do you do the performance?
We do 8 shows a week, 6 days a week. So I have 1 day off, which is Monday. But if I'm not in rehearsal, then my days are free. On the weekends, I do 2 shows, matinee and a night performance on Saturday and Sunday. But again, if I'm not called into rehearsal, then I have my days free. And that's when I'm normally, being a mother and a writer.
I want to ask you something about acting and actors, and then we can get to your book that you just wrote. Because I've always been curious about this. Theater actors, it's a totally different, I hate to use the word ball game, but it's a totally different situation than a movie actor or even a television actor, because you're there, you're live. If you screw up, you got to cover and just keep going, right? You don't stop and retake. Okay.
We don't have a different take. We can't recut, reshoot.
Right. You just keep going. Whatever happens, you just keep going.
Yeah. And that's when your improv skills come into play.
Oh, certainly. But my question is, how do you, because you're doing the same show day after day after day after day, how do you keep it fresh for yourself? I mean, how do you keep from like getting so bored with it because you're doing the same thing over and over and over again?
Well, to be honest, for me personally, it's two ways that I keep it fresh. Number one, I always remember in the audience that this is their first time seeing it. Most of them, this is their first time seeing it. You know, some of those tickets can run up to like $250, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about, thank you for saving up to take yourself, your date, your whole family. I'm going to give you the best show that I can give. Sorry, three things. Number two, the writing is just ridiculous. This show is just so good all around. Is that I look back on when I first started and some of the things that I've crafted, and one of the lines in the show I say is that Salt Lake City is not a real place. You know, it's a metaphor, and it's important because this whole time you're thinking, oh, are these Ugandans that naive? And they're like, no, we're just, this is a break from our life. We're just going on with this ride and we're experiencing the joy with it. But we know there's no existent, this like, you know, serendipitous. So, you know, so that line, I remember Trey saying, Monica, you really have to land this line because it's very important. And I just remember, and I'm just from there's so many ways that I can land it and get the laugh that he wants. But it's like, it's me. But in order to discover that, I have to be engaged every time, because I can tell by the middle of the show what sort of audience we have. So then I know what sort of approach I'm going to take to it, because literally it's different from like, oh, on Sunday, I feel like they're the bravest people to see the show because there's profanity in it, and you know, but it's all in regards to the story. But on Sunday, people are there coming from after church, so they're a little bit like, sometimes they're sitting there saying, okay, God, forgive me for being here, you know, whatever. You know, so I'm always like, you were brave. You're brave. You saw the show, you saw the heart of it, and you came out a different person, you know, but sometimes you got to do a little coaxing to get them to laugh on that Sunday matinee just after them coming out of church. You know what I mean? It's like a different approach. And then lastly, my life outside of the theater is so full that coming to work is a blessing. It is my respite sometimes when I am writing. I am taking, you know, because I'm a mother of a tween, so I'm, you know, schooling her, taking her to her swim classes. I'm running around trying to find time to go to the bookstore, to cafe, to write. When I get to work, I'm like, yay, I have 3 hours on that stage to pretend to be someone else. So yeah, that's how I keep it fresh.
Oh, well, that's great. You go to work to relax. That's wonderful.
I do.
Oh, if we could only have those kind of jobs, you know, for everyone else. Oh, I was going to ask you, what character do you play in the show?
Well, I am I'm a featured ensemble player. So the first character I play is Mrs. Brown when she comes to the airport, and I do a spoof off of The Lion King. I'm dressed up as Rafiki. And then I play Kimbe, which is my Ugandan character. And I also play Lieutenant Ahura in one segment of the show. I pretty much, I do about like 4 or 5 costume changes.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah, so it keeps me busy.
Tell us about your book. I love the title, Beautiful Carnage.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't know what to make of the title. I didn't read the preview of the book, so I have no idea what it's about.
Beautiful Carnage is pretty much, it's about a young female's assassin, violent coming of age almost. So my heroine, Philemon Doucette, she's a beautiful empty killing machine, fractured from systematic abuse. From the age of 6, she's been programmed to be a killer. And so 16 years later, it is her biggest mission to date. But she's grappling with, so she's fractured in these pieces. Basically, she has a dissociative identity disorder in order for her to deal with this conditioning that, this brainwashing and conditioning since the age of 6. And so she's now 22, and it's just on the eve of her biggest mission. But there's emotions. She's struggling with her programming and wanting to be free and live a normal life, but she doesn't know what a normal life is because she is an assassin, and she's struggling with love, how to find love, and all while in the middle of this mission. And in order for her to be free, she has to be free of this life she is in, and she has to learn how to be whole, because she is basically assigned parts of her personality to deal with the life she's living. So she herself is not doing the killing. This part of her is doing the killing, and it's almost like they stand apart of her. So at certain points, you see her other two personalities, and at one point they're saying, it is not us. There is no we. There is you. You, the good, the bad, the ugly, are doing all of this. And you can't be free until you are whole. So I'm just obsessed with nurture and nature, because I feel like that's our journey in life, is that our parents raise us the best way they can, and they impart all these what's the word am I looking for?
Values?
Values, yeah. But then as an adult, what do? We go, okay, this works, this doesn't work. This works, this doesn't work. Oh my God, I'm learning about this about myself and this about myself. So it's a lot of putting on and stripping off. Yeah. Imagine doing that as
as an assassin.
As an assassin. I pretty much was a child soldier, raised as a child soldier. And really all I want to do is really have a chance to live a life without the gun.
Okay, so she's an assassin, and then she has a conflict or a battle of conscience.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that sounds great.
Mid-mission, in the mission, so.
Mid-mission, oh, fantastic.
And it's the two locales is, Louisiana, her mission is in Japan, and it has to do with, the CIA and the Yakuza, and so all of this happening amongst this gritty underworld. And of course it is a steamy psychological thriller, because when you are an assassin, you have your weapons. Everything is a weapon, even sex. So there's of course sex involved.
Well, there has to be. I mean, especially if it's going to be turned into a film,
Exactly. So yeah, guns, sex, and exotic locales. That's what you're going to get.
Well, it sounds like it's got all the right ingredients for a film. And I know this is going to sound very stock, like a very stock question, but if it were to be turned into a film, who would you want to play the lead?
I actually really thought about this, because I was thinking about, for Philemon, she would be great, because her handler is, I have to have when I wrote her CIA handler, I wrote it in the mind of Beau Bridges. You know what I mean? So and so there are certain characters and head of the Yakuza, Ken Watanabe. But for Philemon, I would either be an unknown, or it would be it would have to be an unknown. I really want that part to really kind of put a young actress on her way.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm not saying it sounds like this movie, but the movie Salt with Angelina Jolie? I mean, she seems to be an obvious, if you were going to pick a huge name, an A-list actor. She could do that part, I think.
She would, but it needs to be, but the character is 22. So that's what I'm saying. It would be someone young and unknown, because literally she is even though the one thing about her personality is formed is her ability to kill, everything else is still forming.
What about Khloe Kardashian?
No.
That was a joke, by the way. You just went so silent. I was like, oh my God, she didn't get the joke.
I know. I'm like, yeah, no.
No.
Absolutely not. No offense to Chloe. I'm sure she's great. Let's get some wine together, Chloe.
Yeah, like I have to go kill somebody now. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have to go get some wine, but first let me film this.
Yeah, okay. Okay, how long has the book been out, by the way?
It'll be 6 months on the 22nd of this month.
And how's it doing?
It's doing really well. It's doing really well. It's growing little by little. I'm catching fire, as I say. It's catching fire. I have, of course, enlisted the help of a publicist, and I'm using all of my techniques as an actress, and I'm pretty much kind of going about it in a sense of how I was growing my career as an actress. And I'm also a script, because I'm also a script writer, so I'm also involved. I've had it submitted it to a lot of contests, and I'm also I wrote a musical that are in talks with a couple of theaters. So I'm all around building my brand as a writer. And on my second novel, not in the series, but a different series that I'm working on about a clan of shapeshifters.
A clan of what?
Shapeshifters, skinwalkers. Native American lore called them skinwalkers, but they're shapeshifters.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, so the book is called The Skinwalker's Daughter. But yeah, so I'm just, it's the platform is growing. I'm very blessed to be a part of a very high profile show, so that helps me. I have a lot of people that come to the show, fans that are now buying the book.
Oh, that's great.
It's listed on my bio. So it's helping. It's growing every day, more and more self.
Did you self-publish the book and then get a publicist, or did you do it the old-fashioned way and submit the book to be published?
You know what? I did it. I started off with submitting the book, and I actually got like a couple of agents requesting to read it and like, hey, go do some changes or whatever. And I remember I went to a book conference in Southern California right before I launched, and I was grappling with, because it usually takes about 5 to 7 years to get your book picked up and published, because it's a long game, and I get it. It's a long game. And also, I was coming up against, not saying no's or anything, but it was like I was crossing genres. An erotic thriller. Thriller writers are predominantly men, and I was actually throwing in sex. So I was getting like, okay, can you calm down on the sex? I'm like, okay, I can do that. Make it 70% thriller, which is what it resulted in. And okay, can we do this? All right, I'll see you at the next conference. And it's a lot of back and forth. But the last conference I was at, they were like, you have this platform. You actually, writing is very solitary, but you already are out there as an actress, and you can use that. You can use the same techniques, and you can use this platform. And normally I wouldn't advise you to do it, but they were like, I kind of got like I think you're ready. So that's why I decided to go forth and self-publish.
Well, I think that as an actor, you could probably do your own audiobook as well.
Exactly.
If you were going to do that. Because a lot of times people they're not recommended to do their own audiobook simply because writers typically don't have speaking ability that a professional actor would have. But I think in your case, and that would actually be a good selling point, that you did your own audiobook. I know somebody else who did that. She was on the show a month or two ago. Her name's Catherine Lee Scott. I don't know if you know who she is. She was one of the original stars of the old Dark Shadows TV series.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You remember that show? Yeah. And she was on, and she wrote a book about her husband's affliction, which he died of. And she did her own audiobook. And I thought, wow, that's really cool, because it's not usual. That,
I like I said, I was towing with the, and I'm not saying like and I also was looking at a lot of authors who are what they say hybrid, that they've been traditionally published and self-published, and so I'm flirting with that with the next book. But I realize that even people that are traditionally published, they still have to do a lot of their own platform. They still have to do a lot of their own social media marketing and everything. And working with my publicist now, he says he was just surprised at how much I had done on my own. But that's like, actors do that. You have to have you have to have your website. You have to have your business cards. You have to be on social media, out there. This is a show I'm doing. You always have to be touting the next show. What are you doing? I mean, even when we're in a show, we're always doing interviews. So like, this is still something new for like authors to get out there. I think probably the person who's the best at doing this is James Patterson. He's like P.T. Barnum out there doing commercials now for the bookshop. So it just cracks me up. But like, you have to do that now. You just can't be behind, the computer or the typewriter. You have to be a showman.
I did want to ask you one thing, and then we're going to have to end this interview, unfortunately. But I wanted to ask you about Trey Parker and Matt
Stone.
Right. Sorry, I forgot his last name. Are they as crazy in person, or are they really subdued in real life? The reason I say that is because people who have those incredible minds to create stuff like South Park and Book of Mormon can tend to be, just from my own personal experience, can tend to be really sort of stiff in person.
I wouldn't call them stiff. I wouldn't call them stiff at all. But what I would say to them is that they're serious about their business.
Okay.
Like, when you come, when they were there, and they were there in the beginning all the time, you came to work and they were fun. They were generous. They were always like, hey, drinks after the show. We're having a party. But when you were at work, you worked. So I'm not going to say they were taskmasters, but they were really serious about their craft and their show. And, because they had people that were investing in them as well.
Right.
So everyone was beholding to everyone. So, yeah, they were fun. They were fun to be with after work, after the show. But during work, they were serious. They were your boss. They were your boss, and you did your job.
And they knew what they wanted from the actors, yeah?
Completely. I mean, because they're actors themselves. They do all the voices.
Right.
Sometimes you had to say like, hey, trust me, because they're so used to doing all of the characters.
Right.
Sure, this was weird, like having to deal with actors who were going to like do their own spin on things.
Well, listen, this has been a very interesting and fun interview. Your website is monicapattonforever.com.
Yes.
Does that have all the information for when you're going to be?
All the information for, the book, Beautiful Carnage, my single, Beautiful Carnage. Yes, I wrote a theme song for my book. All my new material that I'm working on, everything, Beautiful Carnage is available, of course, on Amazon worldwide. It's available in 13 countries right now. Also available on Barnes & Noble, Kobo, just anywhere that ebooks are sold, as well as, again, Beautiful Carnage book and single. And all that is available on my website as well.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, well, you just mentioned that you had a single for this book, which I think is a first for me. I don't think I've ever had an author come with a song. So tell us just a little bit about the song, and then we'll listen to it.
Yeah, well, the song is called Beautiful Carnage, as the book, Beautiful Carnage. And when I wrote it, I was thinking of getting into the voice of the main character, Philemon Doucette, and her struggles with trying to do the right thing and become the person that she wants to be. So it really is, it's really a song about her struggles and her struggling with her programming. One of the lyrics is, don't let me get all crazy, because she's in fear of losing her mind, of losing herself through this darkness. Every time she pulls that trigger, she loses a little bit of herself. So yeah, I wrote a theme song to go with the book because, I guess in the back of my mind, I do envision it as a movie.
Well, there you go. You've got the theme song already. Are you singing it?
Yes, I am. I'm singing on it.
So you wrote the song, you sing the song.
I wrote the song and I sing. Yeah, it's a pop, like a dance tune. A little homage to like EDM, dance pop, and because I grew up in dancing in Chicago, New York, and a little bit of that deep house feel to it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. We'll just go out with your song. How's that?
I would be honored. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, this is Monica Patton, and the song and the book is called Beautiful Carnage.
Makes you wanna scream out loud. Little bomb with the sharp stick inside. We'll have some fun, then you can hurry up and die. Don't cry, cause it's not personal. I'm a little off and the drugs don't work, Don't get upset, it will only hurt a little bit. Drink it all, I promise you to make it quick.